Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is pro-revenge story. I've been lurking for some time and now I'm ready to share my pro-revenge story. For context, I was working at a multinational firm where I completed my final internship after finishing my master's degree in 2023. They liked my work and offered me a position as a junior consultant. Fresh from school, I couldn't have been happier. Being naive, I signed the contract without worrying about the minor details. One clause stated that the notice period was set at 3 months. I questioned this and they assured me, it's not a big deal, just for compliance purposes with the parent company. Fair enough, I started working. During my second month, a colleague made a serious mistake that jeopardized one of our biggest accounts, a global banking giant that could easily have made headlines. They fired him and offered me the opportunity to work on the account. Despite lacking sufficient experience to handle a team managing one of our largest clients, I accepted the offer anyway. I began collaborating with a team located in a different country to work with this international bank, which has branches practically everywhere. This meant frequent interactions with associates worldwide. We're impressed with how quickly you've adapted, my supervisor Rachel told me during our first quarterly review. Not many juniors could handle this level of responsibility. The clients were very pleased with my work, and I even had my own team working under me when I needed to handle multiple accounts. My manager, Marcus, expressed how happy he was because I exceeded expectations and brought more revenue to the firm. While awaiting a substantial raise and bonus during my annual evaluation in early 2024, Marcus said, "Look, you've done well, but nothing special. You're just doing what's expected of someone in your position." I swallowed my anger and continued to work flawlessly, maintaining the same quality as before, but with a definite "fuck you" attitude. They even assigned me additional accounts and a team to manage, and because I'm petty by nature, I wasn't going to let this slight go easily. During my second-year evaluation in 2025, they tried to dig up dirt on me to justify their treatment. They found nothing. The client was extremely satisfied with my work. Marcus and the HR director, Vanessa, went the extra mile to try to extract negative feedback from my team. Again, they found nothing. My academic background had equipped me with plenty of management tools. I was an effective team leader, trained my people well, and took responsibility for every decision. At the yearly evaluation meeting, the managing partner Alexander and Vanessa acknowledged, "You're very competent and have done flawless work, but you haven't shown enough motivation to climb the ladder further this year." These SOBs gave me the poorest raise and bonus despite having supposedly objective rules where the defining factor was client appreciation, which was excellent in my case. Then came the revenge part. It seemed like the stars were aligning for me. For that major bank account, I was the only remaining member from the original team. Because it required extensive international coordination, not everyone could keep track of everything, and there was an account history to maintain. We worked with many high-profile associates globally who had zero tolerance for mistakes. As the last member of the old team, the account associate requested that I visit him in another country and expressed to Marcus how much he relied on me for the upcoming busy season. Now for the fun part. The peak season for work runs from January until late April. With a 3-month notice requirement, they had little to worry about, or so they thought. In late December 2025, I resigned and demanded to serve only 1 month's notice. "I'm submitting my resignation effective today," I told Vanessa, sliding the letter across her desk. "I'll be working a 1-month notice period, not 3. I knew their playbook. They would claim they needed to consult with Alexander and would get back to me as soon as possible, but in the meantime, I should train someone to replace me. At the end of the month, once a replacement was trained, they would say Alexander refused my request and I must stay the full 3 months or pay for the remaining 2 months. They had done this to everyone before me. Having had a year to plan my revenge, I had set aside my revenge money to remove their leverage. I waited a week and went back to see Vanessa. She said she was still waiting for Alexander's approval. I returned to my office and canceled my 5 days of paid vacation scheduled for the end of December. I had the following email exchange. Marcus, "You can't cancel your paid vacation as there isn't much work to do at that time. You will take paid vacation like everyone else." Me, "I won't take it. I'm not like everyone else. I'm on resignation notice." Marcus, "Doesn't matter. You'll take it nevertheless." Me, "As stated by labor laws, an employee on resignation notice can't take paid vacation. Otherwise, it will extend their notice by the said vacation period unless there is an agreement between the two parties, which in our case there is not." With nothing left to say, Marcus forwarded the email chain to Vanessa, who then asked me to come discuss the matter with her. "I'm being professional," I told her firmly. "I requested a reduced notice period and offered to train someone. A week has passed with no replacement and I'm still waiting for your feedback." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. We haven't found the right person to replace you yet, and we're still looking. I don't really care, I replied. You said in my evaluation that I did nothing special and don't have what it takes to climb the ladder. Vanessa noticed my determined expression. I understand it was brutal how we treated you, she admitted. But you can't just leave. You'll stay 3 months, and we have plenty of time to find someone to replace you. You will train them. I leaned forward. That's not going to happen. At the end of the month, I'm leaving, and you can't stop me. In that case, you'll have to pay 2 months' salary, which is a substantial amount, she countered. No problem, I responded without hesitation. I was prepared for that possibility. My check is ready. She panicked and called Marcus and the operations director, Jack, to join the meeting. You can't leave even if you pay. We have to accept your departure, which won't happen, they insisted collectively. As stated by law, Section X, Paragraph Y, I can in fact leave and I don't need your approval, I replied confidently. Jack, a poker champion, was brought to the meeting specifically to call my bluffs. I leaned across the table to give him enough physical cues to see I wasn't bluffing. I'm leaving at the end of the month, I stated firmly. You have 2 options. Option 1, I pay you for the 2 months, but train nobody. Option 2, I train somebody to replace me, but I won't pay you. Choose wisely. Vanessa's face reddened. This is blackmail. Call it whatever you want, I shrugged. That's my offer. Take it or leave it. You have less than 3 weeks to decide. Jack eyed me carefully. How can we be sure you'll train them properly? You can't, I replied bluntly. If you want the second option, I need a written agreement before I start any training. In their rush, they agreed to waive the 2 months' payment in exchange for training someone. They found a junior with no experience to replace me. I gave her inadequate training, and after 2 months, the client was dissatisfied and dropped our firm. To put this in perspective, on the bank account alone, I billed 2,000 hours annually at a rate of $200 per hour. They essentially gave up over $3,000,000 of annual revenue because they thought it was wise to shortchange a junior staff member on raises and bonuses for 2 consecutive years. The next one is an entitled people story. Let me tell you about the worst and best 6 months of my life, all because some power-hungry HOA board members couldn't mind their own business. I moved into Oakwood Estates 5 years ago. It wasn't my first choice of neighborhood, but the house was in my price range and close to my job at the auto repair shop where I've worked for the past decade. The previous owner mentioned something about an HOA, but said they were pretty hands-off. That was true for the first few years. Everything changed when Janet Thompson got elected as HOA president. She ran on a platform of improving property values and neighborhood beautification, which turned out to be code for making everyone's life miserable. The problem started with my truck. I drive a 2001 Ford F-150 that I've kept running all these years. It's not pretty, but it's reliable and paid off. One day, I found a notice taped to my front door. Vehicle in violation of HOA aesthetic guidelines. All vehicles must be less than 10 years old and maintained in excellent cosmetic condition. Please remove from property within 72 hours or face a $100 daily fine. I checked my HOA bylaws and there was nothing about vehicle age requirements. The only rule was that vehicles had to be in working order and parked in the driveway or garage. My truck was definitely working. I drove it every day. I ignored the notice. 3 days later, another one appeared stating I now owed $100. I called the HOA office. This is Rick from 1543 Maple Drive. I got a notice about my truck, but there's nothing in the bylaws about vehicle age. The board passed a new resolution last month, said the woman on the phone. All homeowners were notified by email. I never got any email, I said. Well, it's your responsibility to keep your contact information updated. The conversation went downhill from there. I hung up and decided to attend the next HOA meeting to sort this out. Meanwhile, the notices kept coming, and my supposed fine balance kept growing. At the meeting, I raised my hand during the open forum. I'd like to discuss this new vehicle rule. I never received notification about it, and I think it's unreasonable to expect everyone to have a newer vehicle. Janet, the HOA president, looked at me like I'd suggested we turn the community pool into a toxic waste dump. The resolution was properly passed according to our bylaws, she said, and frankly, your truck is an eyesore that brings down property values. Several neighbors have complained. I looked around the room. No one would meet my eyes. Can I see documentation of these complaints? I asked. That's confidential HOA business, Janet snapped. Your fines now total $500. If you don't pay within 14 days, we'll place a lien on your property. That's when my yard became the next target. I work 50, 60 hours a week at the shop, So my lawn wasn't winning any awards, but it wasn't terrible either. Suddenly, I was getting notices about grass height, weeds, and insufficient landscaping. The fines kept piling up. $100 for grass over 4 inches, $200 for excessive weeds, $300 for lack of decorative elements. Within a month, they claimed I owed over $2,000. I tried reasoning with them. I tried ignoring them. I even tried improving my yard on my limited time off. Nothing helped. The notices kept coming, and Janet started sending certified letters threatening legal action. One Saturday morning, I was replacing my truck's alternator in my driveway when a tow truck pulled up. The driver handed me a paper. "Got orders to tow this vehicle," he said. "Like hell you do," I replied. "This is my private property." The driver shrugged. "I'm just doing my job, man." I stood in front of my truck. "You're not taking it." He called someone, probably Janet, and left after a heated conversation. I thought that was the end of it. 2 days later, I was at work when my neighbor called. "Rick, there are police at your house." I rushed home to find 2 officers and Janet standing in my driveway next to my truck. "Sir, this vehicle has been reported as abandoned," one officer said. "Abandoned? I drive it every day." I was trying to stay calm, but my blood was boiling. "The HOA has documentation showing this vehicle hasn't moved in over 30 days, the officer continued. "That's a lie," I said. "I was literally working on it 2 days ago." Janet smirked. "We have photographic evidence." The officers looked uncomfortable, but said they had to follow procedure. They gave me a citation for an abandoned vehicle and said it would be towed if not removed within 24 hours. I moved my truck to a friend's house that night, borrowing his car to get to work. The next day, I returned home to find another notice. $500 fine for unauthorized landscaping because I'd trimmed my own hedges without HOA approval. This went on for weeks. Every time I fixed one issue, they found another. My fines were now over $5,000, which I had no intention of paying for these bogus violations. Then came the day that changed everything. I returned from a 12-hour shift to find police cars in front of my house. As I pulled up, officers approached me. "Are you Richard Mercer?" "Yes, what's going on?" "We have a warrant for your arrest for property code violations and contempt of court." "What court? I was never summoned to any court." Turns out Janet had gone to court claiming I was in violation of multiple property codes. She provided my old email address for the court summons, which I never received. When I didn't show up, the judge issued a bench warrant. I spent 3 days in county jail before my buddy could bail me out. 3 days of my life lost because I wouldn't get rid of my truck or landscape my yard to Janet's standards. When I got out, I was beyond furious. This had gone way too far. I called every lawyer in town until I found one who specialized in HOA disputes. "They did what?" he said after hearing my story. "Oh, this is going to be good." My lawyer Dave explained that while HOAs have certain powers, what they'd done to me crossed numerous legal lines. The vehicle age rule hadn't been properly added to the bylaws. The fines were excessive and imposed without proper notification. Most importantly, Janet had committed perjury by lying to the court about serving me papers and about my truck being abandoned. Dave filed a lawsuit against the HOA and Janet personally for harassment, abuse of power, filing false police reports, and malicious prosecution. We also filed complaints with the County Property Association Board and the State Attorney General's office. The discovery process was eye-opening. We found emails between Janet and 2 other board members discussing how to get rid of the eyesores in the neighborhood, meaning me and 2 elderly residents who also couldn't keep up with Janet's landscaping demands. They had been targeting people who didn't fit their vision of a premium community. When we presented this evidence in court, Janet's lawyer immediately pushed for a settlement. They offered to waive all my fines if I dropped the case. "Not a chance," I told Dave. "They had me arrested. I want my day in court." The judge was not impressed with Janet or the HOA. He dismissed all fines against me, ordered the HOA to pay my legal fees, and awarded me $75,000 in damages for harassment and emotional distress. Janet was removed from the board and faced separate charges for filing false police reports. The cherry on top? The county investigation revealed that the HOA had been improperly managing funds for years. Janet and the treasurer had been using HOA money for personal expenses, which explained why they were so aggressive about collecting fines. After the case, several neighbors apologized for not speaking up sooner. They'd been afraid of becoming Janet's next target. With Janet and her cronies gone, the neighborhood elected a new board that actually focused on community improvement rather than harassment. I still live in Oakwood Estates. My truck is still in my driveway. My yard looks decent but not magazine-worthy, and no one says a word about it. The best part? The settlement money paid off my mortgage. So while Janet thought she was driving me out of the neighborhood, she actually helped me own my home outright. Sometimes I see her at the grocery store. She always looks the other way. I just smile, knowing that her attempt to control my life backfired in the most satisfying way possible. Never mess with a working man's truck or try to jail someone over grass height. It might just be the biggest mistake of your life. The next one is a malicious compliance story. In my 20s, I spent a little over 5 years working for an oil and gas well service company. It was a 15 on, 6 off rotation. The first 4 years was at a small shop roughly 7 hours from home, at which point I transferred to a much busier shop that was only a few hours from home. 5 years seems like peanuts in the working world, but in this particular line of work it was a long time. Decent job security as far as oilfield work goes, but the pay was marginal at best, so turnover was high. At 5 years, I was the most experienced hand in our shop. The new shop was definitely busier, the money was way better, and I managed to have my days off matched up with a supervisor whose way of doing things meshed perfectly with me. Everything else about the place, awful. My breaking point was being denied a day off with 2 days' notice to attend a funeral for a good friend who was lost to some health complications after a car accident. I was generally pretty understanding that in our line of work it could be difficult to always balance manpower, but the day I requested off passed with 4 other hands sitting around at the shop doing make-work projects to pass the day. Management couldn't be bothered to take a few minutes to see if they could make things work. It was easier to just say no. To that point in my employment there, I had been extremely flexible with helping out during manpower shortages. I had probably worked in excess of 100 days off and had only ever used 1 sick day. I thought a little reciprocity would have been nice, but I made up my mind I'd fulfill my obligation to work 1 year at that shop as to not have to pay back the $4,000 transfer bonus I'd received, and then it would be time to move on. I was only a few months off of that 1 year mark, so I started job shopping immediately and quickly set my sights on a mine that we regularly did work for that was close enough to home that I could commute on a daily basis. I made some inquiries with people I knew that were working there, and it seemed right up my alley. Not long after that, I updated my resume and sent it in. A few weeks later, I'm driving back from a job and get a voicemail from HR at the company I applied to. I called back as soon as I had a spare minute, and they were looking to have me come in for an interview 2 days later. My heart sank, knowing that was going to be a struggle. I talked with the HR lady, seeing if they had any other dates available, but it was explained to me that they only arrange 1 interview day once they have enough holes to fill in their crews to justify doing orientation with a group of new hires. She said she could put me as first call for the next round, but didn't know when that would be, and she said it would also be fairly short notice. In the end, I agreed to the interview appointment, not knowing how I was going to make it work. I immediately went to the assistant manager to ask for time off as he was looking after dispatching duties that week. I told him something important came up at home that I really need to get dealt with. Without hesitation, he said, "No, we have a full board this week and need you here. Whatever it is, we'll have to wait for your days off." My first thought was that I was just going to call in sick and go to the job interview. The last thing I wanted to do was worry about being fired from a job I no longer want. Then I realized maybe there was another path forward and went to the job board. And there it was, exactly what I needed. A potentially week-long job for the company I was set to interview with, and the job was scheduled to start the next day. And none of the jobs had been assigned to crews yet. I filled my supervisor in with the circumstances and my plan, and he was on board with it. We went to the assistant manager and offered to take that job. He was delighted to have us volunteer, as not many crews cared to be away from home for a week, mainly being confined to a rig shack. Day 1 went smoothly, and we were done by early afternoon. I used the supervisor's truck and went home to get some interview-appropriate clothes. Day 2, we were running a bit behind, but we just barely got the job set up and our tools deployed into the well with enough time for me to grab a quick shower and change of clothes before again taking the supervisor's truck over to the administration building for my interview. Got a call the next week with an offer of a start date 2 weeks out. Starting wage was definitely lower than I was making, but they offered clearly defined progression that would have me easily equaling my current income in year 2 and well exceeding it by year 4. Benefits were better, and the schedule would give me twice as much time off. Went to give my manager 2 weeks' notice, and he asked where I was going and what I'd be making. He was appalled I'd leave for such a low starting wage. He asked what it would take to keep me. I told him, "When a person takes a pay cut to leave, obviously that ship sailed long ago." The next one is an entitled people story. CF was one of the first people I had met when I first moved down to my current town. I had made a post on Facebook in a group for community members of the town, saying how nervous I was about moving to a new place. CF sent me a DM saying he'd like to meet up and introduce me to some of his friends because I was new in town. I'm on the spectrum and I can be incredibly oblivious to people's intentions. I didn't really think he had more sinister motives in his head at the time. I met up with him and some of his buddies at this karaoke event my town was holding. It was definitely a very fun time. Singing is something I really enjoy doing, even if I'm not the best at it. Ever since that day, he seemed to always be asking me if I wanted to hang out. I did a couple of times. Other times I wasn't able to because I was really busy with work. He always seemed to get insanely butthurt whenever I said no. Okay, now for some context as to how I even got him as a roommate. About a year and a half after I had first moved into the apartment, I find out that he was moving into the same complex as me. This honestly caught me a bit off guard because the complex I was living in only ever seemed to rent towards people in their 20s or early 30s. Well, a few months after he had moved in, the unit I was staying in at the time had to be vacated. I honestly can't remember why. The building management moved me to the unit CF was staying in because it was the only one they had available on such short notice, as well as him badgering them about transferring me over to his unit. I didn't really have much of a choice in the matter, unfortunately. Well, I moved in and kept to myself for the most part. I mostly stayed in my room, playing video games when I wasn't at work. I never really noticed his controlling behavior until he found out I got a partner, 35M. Whenever my partner was over, he left me alone for the most part, but always seemed to be pestering my partner, always badgering him to do this and to do that, yada yada yada. CF tried to convince me that my partner was a bad influence, and while he never actually said for me to break up with my partner, I think he implied it with his actions. Essentially, any behavior I did that he didn't like, he always assumed my partner had something to do with it in some way, shape, or form. He always tried to convince me his ways were the best, like the previous story about the groceries and other such things. Well, now that I have a bit of context out of the way, I think it's time for the story I had for this one. Now, I have a love for cooking, and one of my favorite things to make is tater tot casserole. Such a simple and yummy recipe. One night, I got a case of the munchies and had a craving for the casserole, so I decided to make it. It was pretty late at night, around 10, when I started to make it. I apparently was making too much noise when I was prepping it, and he came out of his room to yell at me that he was trying to sleep. Okay, this frustration was understandable, and I apologized. He let me know he went to bed at 10 every night and told me not to go in the kitchen at that time. So I stopped going into the kitchen at that time. Apparently, he didn't really mean every night, because almost every night after that, I heard him loudly talking on the phone, laughing his butt off for some reason, and had loud music and TV playing. Every time it was well after 10. Why the hell did he tell me to not go in the kitchen at that time? Honestly, probably because he wanted the space to himself, but that's just a guess. I never really said anything about it, though. I'm the type of person that really does not conflict. I really should have confronted him for this, but I was a coward and never did. The next one is an entitled parent story. Hi, so this happened about 6 years ago, back in 2019. I, F, was 24-year-old at the time when I, F, was still living in New Jersey, just finished college and working as a shift manager at a fast food restaurant, which I will not name, while also doing my tattoo apprenticeship. One day, one of the cashiers, who I will call Jane, came up to me and asked for help as there was a situation in the counter she didn't really know how to deal with. At the counter was this man and his son, and behind him was this woman with 2 younger kids. The man then explained that he is the father of his 10-year-old son, and the woman behind him is his ex, who is the mother of his son, but he is not the father of her 2 other kids. He had custody of his son today, so he was taking him out for lunch and to visit a museum, but the baby mama and her 2 other kids, as he called her, just so happened to also show up at the restaurant the same time he pulled up. She was demanding that he also treat her 2 other kids for lunch and take them to the museum as well, but the man said he is responsible for his son and his son only. His ex then tried to interject, saying that she didn't want her kids to be left out while her oldest kid, the son, got special treatment, and that their dads are not in the picture. That said, she wanted the man to pay for the lunches of her 2 other kids as well. I told Jane I'll take it from here, and the man told me that he will order 2 Baconator combos for himself and his son. As I was taking his order, the woman then tried shouting the order for her 2 other kids. The man and his ex then started arguing again. Then the man turned to me, adamantly stating he will only pay for his order and that of his son, plus he will pay in cash. The woman then started shouting at me to add her order to his as well. I just told the woman that she will need to wait her turn. The man paid for his order and waited. The woman then came up to me, gave me her order, plus that of her kids, but when I told her the price of her 5 combos, for herself and her 2 kids, she then asked, didn't Booker, referring to her ex, already pay for it? I told her that his order was only for himself and his son, and that her order was separate from his. Also, I only took her order after the man paid, so yeah. The woman then started screaming at me at how hard it is for her to be a single mom. She doesn't have the money to pay, but she, pointing to her, the man, her ex again, saying that he should have paid for her order as he's single, has a full-time job, and lives by himself. The man then shouted, reiterating that her 2 other kids are not his responsibility. I told the woman that I sympathize with her, I genuinely do, but that I can't just add her order to that of another customer who already paid and very specifically said he'd only pay for his order. I then asked her if she's still paying for her order or if I need to cancel it. She then tried to grab his wallet, demanding he give her his credit card, but he pushed her off, then she left, telling the man to take her 2 other kids with him to the museum with him. Yes, she legit just left her kids with him. At this point, I didn't really know what else to do, but the man told me that he'd also like to buy some fries and chili for her 2 other kids he left with her, and told me that he'd drop them off at his ex's, the mom's, place himself. I told him not to bother paying for the extra fries as it's on the house and I'll just add extra fries to his existing order. I decided to share this because I recently witnessed another parent randomly abandoning their kid at a Taco Bell and that reminded me of this. Anyway, thank you for watching.